Flashback 20 years and Facebook had just launched, paving the way for me to post some very embarrassing Facebook statuses. Shrek 2 was released in theaters. Arsenal went undefeated and won the Premier League by 11 points. And my U11 coach screamed at me for not communicating enough on the field. During the second half of that game, I tried everything in my power to talk as much as possible, but it just felt like I was talking to talk. I wasn't helping out anybody. I was just trying to fill the empty silence with my voice. Now, as a 31-year-old professional footballer, I understand what needs to be said, what information needs to be communicated, and I understand how important and vital communication is on the field. So this video is going to try to encompass everything that professional footballers say to each other on the field, minus some swear words or curse words. Communicating on defense is basically positioning your teammates to get into the right starting spot, then manipulating your teammates' movements and actions depending on the situation, and then finally passing information to your teammates about the movements and positions of the opposing players. Typically on defense, the communication kind of goes from the back towards the front. So the goalkeeper will mostly talk to the center backs, but they'll help position everybody in front of them. The center backs will mainly talk to their fullbacks and center mids, but again, they can reach all the way up to the strikers. The fullbacks will talk to their center backs, their center mid, and especially the winger that sits directly in front of them. And it kind of just goes up and up the field with you navigating and manipulating and talking to the people directly around you. Lastly, the directions that you give to your teammates, the information you give to your teammates is really going to depend on your team's tactics. And those tactics can change from game to game, from coach to coach, from season to season. It's very fluid. But even though those tactics can change, there's still fundamental defensive principles that you want to learn and fundamental phrases that are said regardless of your tactics. So let's start with some phrases that you've definitely heard before. First, we have step and up. Anytime there's a big backwards pass from the opposing team, especially a backwards pass to their own goalkeeper, anytime that your team clears up a ball, anytime that your team starts to counterattack, or there's a bad touch, or there's a pressing trigger, basically all of your lines want to step up, condense the space, gain some yards, and push up the field. Sometimes you'll tell your team exactly where to step. Like if you clear the ball after a corner kick, you might say to step all the way up to the 18, step to the 18, or all the way up to half if a ball is played all the way back to the goalkeeper. Next, we have drop. When there's no pressure on the ball and you can see some strikers or wingers on the other team starting to make runs in behind, you need as a defensive line to usually drop 5-10 yards to prepare for that long ball. Unless of course your tactics are to play a high line and an offsides trap or something like that. But typically as a center back or a fullback or even sometimes a center mid, you'll scream out drop to your team to let them know a long ball is probably coming, some runs are coming, and we need to drop our defensive line 5-10 yards. Hold. On the flip side, if you don't think it's the right time to drop 5 or 10 yards, or you already think that you're deep enough, or maybe those wingers or strikers are already in an offside position, you can tell your teammates to hold the line, hold the position, so you're not going to drop any further, and you can keep those players offside, or you can keep your position so you don't get too disconnected from your midfield line. Then you have the basic right or left, and this is where you kind of try to manipulate the positioning of the player directly in front of you. As a right fullback, I constantly am screaming at my winger, right, left, inside, outside, moving his position so he can usually cut off the middle of the field, cut off that pass into the midfield or into the 10, and he can force that ball out to the fullback. But there's times when there's nobody in the center of the field and they're playing with an overloaded side and everybody's on the wing and he doesn't need to block the middle, or our tactics are to force the ball in the middle into the center of the field and he wants to round his run, then I'm screaming at him right, right, right. So I'm constantly talking to him and pushing him left, right around the field. Similar to that, you can say stay inside, stay wide. Again, really talking to my winger or talking to my center mid. Sometimes they'll drift or start following somebody, and when I don't want them to follow that person or that player anymore, I just say stay inside. Or if we're switching and I want him to track the guy out and I'm going to stay with the guy inside, I'll tell him stay wide. I'll also say watch wide all the time. My center back will say watch wide. Anytime that the ball's on the opposite side of the field and that player starts to creep up, whether it's a fullback or winger outside, sometimes my center back will be like, hey, Maddie, watch wide. Or I'll talk to my winger, watch wide here, just so that you're aware of that player, that he's starting to creep up or starting to move in that position, so you're not caught off guard when he starts to make a run or that ball's switched. Next, we have halfway. And this is a really important thing, especially if we start to get overloaded and they bring extra numbers to our side or in the middle or whatever it is. And sometimes you don't want to just go man to man and follow those runners. So a lot of times what you're going to do is tell one player, like your right winger, to go halfway in between the center mid and halfway between that left fullback. That way he can kind of occupy two jobs, getting ready. If that ball is played in the middle, he can collapse on that center mid, or if it's played out wide, then he can sprint out and apply pressure to that fullback. But as a starting position, I want him halfway in between those two players. Similarly, the center back will tell me all the time, halfway between the winger and the striker, or I'll tell my center mid halfway between their two center mids. It's really just to show you that you have two players. Occupy that for now. I have to deal with this, and when that ball comes, we'll reorganize. So those are the phrases that I tried to use to set up the starting positions to manipulate the movements a little bit. But then as the game starts to go, then you have your tactical phrases. Sometimes you on the fly change things up or modify what you're doing based off the other team's movements or whatever their game plan is. So the first one, again, you've probably heard a ton: press, or just yelling at somebody yes when they start to step. Most teams will have their starting position somewhere higher up on the field nowadays. And then when that ball is played to a pressing trigger, usually a deep fullback out to the sideline, or if there's a bobbled pass or a mistake or a mistouch or a slow backwards pass, then your team usually jumps on that and presses those areas. But sometimes it's not completely clear, and a lot of the strikers or wingers don't know if it's 100% the right time to press. So as a midfielder, or sometimes as a fellow striker or as a back line, you can all get on the same page by screaming at them to press, 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 or if they start to press, encouraging them to keep on pressing by just shouting, yes, yes. And it's so important because there's also times on the flip side, which you'll hear, where you want to tell them to hold, or you'll hear, we're not ready, or just no, just screaming at somebody no as soon as they start to run. And this is the exact opposite when it might be a pressing trigger and your striker sees that and he starts to go, but maybe structurally behind the ball, you're not ready, or you still have guys recovering, or maybe it's just too far of a distance. You can just tell them, no, it's not the right time. Hold your press, reorganize, wait again, be patient, and then we'll start that press up in a few seconds or minutes or passes when that next pressing trigger comes. Next, you have step to ball. Sometimes with overlapping runs or movements, or sometimes the player just doesn't know if he's ready, he's just trying to delay. But once you're ready behind the ball and you have support, you can tell that player to apply pressure, to step to the ball. That just reinforces that, again, there's people behind him, there's support behind him. So if he is beat, it's not going to be a counterattack straight to your goal. Next, you have force wide, or cut inside, cut the inside. And this is just telling your player to take up a position where he's blocking the middle of the field and forcing a pass, forcing a dribble, forcing the play out wide. This happens all the time. Center backs say this all the time to their fullbacks. Fullbacks say this all the time to the wingers. Center mid say it to their wingers. Usually when the ball is moving around, you want to force it outside, out wide, away from your goal. You're cutting off the most dangerous passing lanes inside, cutting off the inside dribble, and trying to keep everything away from goal. However, it's not always that simple. There's a lot of times where you do want to force a player inside. Sometimes it's a 2v1 out wide. Somebody will shout to me to force inside, especially if it's a center mid coming over to help. They'll tell me to cut off the line, force inside, and force that player inside into that 2v1 that we have going. Sometimes as well, high up the field, you'll have your tactics where you want your winger to basically round his run, or their strikers to round their run to cut off the easy pass to the fullbacks and force a dangerous ball into that 6 where you have numbers and high pressure. Again, usually you want to force outside, but there's plenty of times where I'm screaming force inside, cut wide, whatever it is. Foul. Simple. Foul the player, stop the counterattack, take the tactical yellow card. We don't want to lose this game in the 88th minute from a counter, so foul this guy. Then you have no foul. This is typically when a player has no options. He's dribbling, back towards everything, out of bounds or out towards his own end line. The last thing you want to do is bail them out, foul them, and give them a free kick. So you scream no foul, just to remind that player, stand him up, force him wide. He'll probably lose the ball as long as you don't bail him out with a foul. Can't get out. You'll hear this a ton from your center mids or people centrally talking to their wide players when it is a good pressing trigger, when the ball's been forced out wide, when you have numbers collapsing on the ball, you'll hear, can't get out. And that basically means that you need to go and aggressively tackle this player, tackle the ball because you're in a numbers up situation, because he doesn't have options. And if he does beat you, that ball does go by you. Again, you foul there, stop the play. Then you have I got runner, stay with runner. This is usually an overlapping run, but sometimes it's an underlapping run or just a random third man movement. And you're communicating with your winger, with whoever it is. You stay with the runner or you go with the runner. And that's just to make it clear. So two of you don't go with one player and then you leave the other player wide open. And this usually happens when it's an overlapping run outside. The fullback starts to overlap. I'm screaming at my winger to stay with the ball, or I got runner, and I'm following this runner so we can stay positionally with my winger ahead of me. We don't want to overlap and get caught out of position. Now, again, it's not every single time. There's times where I stay with the ball and I tell him, you got runner, stay with runner. But usually with an overlapping run, that's what happens. And lastly, on the defensive side, you have the communication that tries to give information about the other team. On the field, you'll hear a ton of players scream out left shoulder, right shoulder, behind you. And that's typically said when there's a player that starts to creep from your space to another player's space, but tries to get in their blind spots. So you scream or yell at your player, your teammate, be aware if there's somebody right off your right shoulder, right off your left shoulder, or he's creeping directly behind you. A lot of times a smart striker, instead of just standing right in front of the center back, will creep away into his blind spot and will just drift. He'll come over to my side so the center back starts to forget about him. But then he'll start to move and make his movement just off that center back's right shoulder where he can't see him, and then at the last second make a move. So when he's in that half space, I always talk to my center back, or I try to always talk to my center back, right shoulder, he's right behind you, man coming, just to let him know that that guy's right there and just to be aware. A huge one too is just screaming runner. A lot of times my winger will make an out to in run. So he'll run in front of me and behind my center back. And when that happens, if I have time, I scream, Steve, runner, 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 whoever it is, my center back, runner, 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 just to let him know that there's a guy making a run off his shoulder behind him and that he can drop. Again, you can just shout drop if you want, but usually I let him know that someone's making a run right now. And again, as you go higher and higher and the strikers or wingers get smarter and smarter, they'll wait until that center back, they'll be looking. And as soon as that center back starts to get locked onto the ball, that's when they make their run. So that's why the communication is so important. That one time that they get locked into the ball and they're ball watching, you can scream at them and warn them so they don't get caught off guard with that movement. Next, you have here he comes, or man behind. And this is kind of like a walking runner. Like maybe you have someone just drifting from your space into somebody else's space. And you just want to let your center back or your center mid know that, hey, he's coming. It's your responsibility now. I'm passing this player off to you. I have to get somebody else now that's coming into my space. And that's really the defensive side of the game, just positioning them, and then you're manipulating them a little bit based off the other player's movements. And then finally, information of just letting people know he's making a run, he's doing this, watch out. Now, on the offensive side of the things, with the ball, the language changes a little bit. You do a little bit less positional talk. You still do it, but mainly the communication that you're doing is tactical, or it's information about where the other team is applying pressure. So first, offensively, positionally, you might say stay wide or stay inside. Just like how the opposing team is going to move around and change positions and go inside or invert or pop outside to just cause some confusion and chaos for you, you want to do the same exact thing for them. And when you're doing that, you just don't want to run into another player's space and just be crowding them, and then you leave an entire area of the field open. So a lot of times I'll talk to my winger to not be on the same plane or in the same area, and I'll say, hey, you stay inside, I'm going to go high and wide. Or I tell him, stay high and wide, and then I pop inside to occupy that space. In the same way, I also tell him higher or get out. Sometimes he might drop deep for the ball and I don't need him to drop deep, or maybe my center mid drops deep and I'm just saying, get out. I don't have any pressure on the ball, get out of here, get higher. And the opposite, you have drop deep or check in to let your players know, hey, don't just run away from me. I need somebody to check in towards my feet. Usually when you get the ball, the best case scenario, you have one player checking and then you have one player going behind. And lastly, positioning is just open up. Sometimes I'll tell my center mid that starts to come into my space to open up and I go higher. Maybe he yells at me to go higher, get out of here. And we do a little rotation where he pops into my position. I go high and wide to my winger's position. And my winger comes in centrally like a center mid. Again, to just draw players out and cause a little bit of confusion. Then you have the tactical side of the game. So first you have bring it out or recycle or recirculate. And this is when you're starting to attack down one side. And as a player without the ball, you're seeing that it's not the right time to attack. Maybe they're set, maybe they have tons of numbers, maybe it's just 1v3 for you guys. So you're screaming at your player, put your foot on top of it, recirculate it, get it out of there, bring it out so we can go to the other side where there's time and space. And going from that, now you have swing it, other side, switch. And this is obviously a command that you tell your teammate to get the ball over to the other side. There's space there. A lot of times as a right fullback, I'll drive down this side. I'll see it's really not onto attack. I put my foot on it. I play it backwards. I look up and I'll say, switch it, swing it, get it over to the other side because there's tons of time and space over there. Then you have keep it, calm down, easy. This is just a command saying, don't force it. Don't play the ball in behind. It's not the right time. We just want it back. Let's keep the ball. Let's have some possession. Let's catch our breath and let's play the ball around. I say this a ton when it's really been a counter-attacking game and I'm starting to get out of breath. You can tell the whole team is getting tired. And instead of a player just forcing a ball where we lose it again, then have to defend for a minute or 2 minutes straight, you scream at them, keep it, hold it, easy, 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 so that they can just stop it and we can start swinging it around the back or playing it around and we can get in our positions, take a deep breath, and then formulate an attack. You have in behind. This is a command I do all the time to my center back. I'll lay it off for them and I'll shout in behind to basically tell them, look, we're getting pressed. I think their line's high. Pop the ball in behind their defensive line. Let's turn them around. Get it out. Usually keepers say this a lot to their center backs when there's a lot of pressure. Maybe you're inside your 6, just to clear the ball. Don't try to take a touch. Don't try to bring it down and play. It's not the right time. Get it out. You have back stick, second post, back post. This is usually from your strikers or your wingers that are calling for the ball and telling that crosser, clip the ball, chip the ball, put it over to the back post because that's where I'm making my run. Then you have front post, first post, near post, and that's the exact opposite. The striker or winger is going to make his run towards the near post and he wants the ball driven near post in front of everybody. Then you have cut it or top of the box, and it's just what it sounds like. Usually it's a center mid or somebody at the top of the box that's open, and they're telling you as a crosser to do a cut back cross, chop the ball backwards and play it diagonally back because there's space on the top of the box. You have overlap or I'm around. This is usually done by fullbacks, but it can be done by any player anywhere on the field to basically pass the ball into that player. And then you're going to be making overlapping run around them. And you're letting them know that I'm overlapping you. So you drive inside, you try to drive at a defender, try to get them to step to you. And then you can play me wide as I'm overlapping you. You have 1-2, and this is just letting that player know that you're setting up for a 1-2. This can be done by the passer saying, hey, I'm making a run as soon as I pass this ball in behind. So be ready for that. Or it can be as the receiver, when you see that it's on, calling and telling that player, make a run as soon as you pass me that ball for a 1-2. And finally, you have the informational talk with the ball. And this is what I really think makes majority of the talk or communication offensively. You have time, turn, letting your teammate know that he's in a pocket of space and that he can turn, take a touch, and move into that space or pass in that space or dribble into that space. Turn and hit. This is usually done around the top of the box and you tell somebody, hey, that you have space, turn, look at goal and fire off a shot. Bounce, man on. You're letting your teammate know that there's pressure coming behind him to not turn, to not take a touch right at his feet and to play you back the ball or to at least play somebody else the way that they're facing. Right shoulder, left shoulder. Again, this is which direction the pressure is coming from. So sometimes you'll lead your player towards his left shoulder and shout right shoulder because there's pressure coming from his right shoulder and you help him decide which way he needs to turn. Leave it, flick it, hold it. These are commands of what to do when you're receiving the ball. Sometimes you can leave it like a dummy between your legs or around you. You can flick the ball in behind. There's a ton of space in behind. Flick it behind you or hold it up. Put your foot on top of the ball. Get that defender on your back. Give us a second to come up and support you and then play us so we can move up the field. You have first time, and this usually means as a passer that you want your teammate to either strike the ball, clear the ball, or do something with the ball first time with his first touch. Maybe there's pressure coming. Maybe it's a quick shot on top of the box and you're telling him first time, hit it. So you'll say first time and you'll usually pass that ball a little bit lighter to let him know that he doesn't need a touch and he can strike it. Same way, sometimes the receiver might say it. Sometimes he might see something happening and he might say first time to play me the ball with the right weight so that I can play this ball in behind or I can shoot it with one touch. You have drive. This is telling a teammate to continue dribbling with the ball, drive up the field, take space with speed. keeper, play it back to your keeper. It's not on, get it back to the keeper and he'll clear it out. And then finally, yes, my feet. Yeah, obviously this means play me the ball, play it to my feet. I want the ball. So you can see that you still do some positional talk with the ball, especially setting things up, but a lot more of the talk with the ball is usually where the pressure is coming from, what's going on, and what to do next with the ball. Now, the third area of communication is talking to the referee. There is something to be said about getting the official on your side, letting him know that there might be a certain player setting a pick or holding or do something illegal in the box for a corner kick, letting him know that a player is grabbing your shirt or that you were fouled or that there was a handball. You're screaming to get his attention, try to sway his decision just a little bit more. Because if that ball hits and ricochets off the hand of an opponent and you have 4 of your teammates all at the same time shouting handball, it's going to sway that referee that, yeah, there most likely was a handball there. But if all of you guys see the handball and stay silent, and the referee wasn't quite sure if he saw a handball, he most likely won't call a handball. So there is a fine line about how to do this the right way. You don't want to get a yellow card. You don't want to piss off the referee, but you also don't want to be too silent and basically let that game slip away from you. So you need to find the right areas of when to talk to the referee, what to talk to him about, to try to get calls going your way, just even 1% more. And finally, and sometimes the most important part of communication is the emotional aspect. Just encouraging your teammates to continue to tackle or to continue to play that ball in behind. Just those encouraging words like, come on, yes, again, next one. You'll hear that all the time. Love that, Matt. Great look, Matt. All this kind of stuff. You'll hear that encouraging talk from teammates to basically let them know that was the right idea. Continue to do that. The next one's going to work out. And it also encourages even the defensive side to continue to press, continue to make those runs, continue to do whatever it is. And there's also the negative reinforcement too. Sometimes you have to kind of have a go at a player to let him know that the standard that he's doing is not good enough. You don't want to belittle them or basically point fingers, but you can say stuff like, come on, Matt, wake up, Matt, connect that next pass, Matt, just stuff like that where you're letting them know like, look, it needs to be better. And there you go. That's pretty much all the communication, all the phrases, all the talk that we do. I'm sure I've missed a lot, but I think I've nailed pretty much all the ideas or the information that's trying to be conveyed. Now, the hard part is not just getting these phrases down and understanding the phrases, but it's really that decision making of what to do, the tactical side of it. Is it the right time to press? Is it the right time to force that play inside? Or is it the right time to force that play outside? Is it the right time for me to stay with this runner? Or is it the right time to pass him on? All these decisions are really what make pros pros. And the more games that you watch, the more games that you watch live and you start to hear players talk, the more games you play on your own, and the more you just get involved and gain experience, the more of this is going to start to make sense and the more natural and the more confident you're going to feel with all your tactical decisions and your communication. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, guys, peace.